What's up, hungry homies, and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know who I am and if you're tuning in for the first time, I am Alyssa Coppolino, IFBB Pro Women's Physique Athlete, Coach Extraordinaire. So I'd just like to say welcome back to my channel today. Today we're going to take a little bit of a different turn and we're actually going to dive into the world of body fat testing and testing body fat measurements, whether you're using a high-tech device or just a simple DIY do-it-yourself at home type of device. If you've ever wondered how accurate those types of body fat testings are that you see at the gym, where they're making you hold on to a couple of things, tin hat on your head, or if you're into a machine at say a laboratory at a university, we're going to kind of take a look to see what the different types of methods are and whether you should trust one over the other. So right off the top, I would say the number one type of body fat testing machine is called a DEXA scan, and it stands for Dual Energy X-ray Absorptiometry. So this is considered the gold standard for body composition testing and any sort of analysis. The process involves laying down on a big table, and there's a big scanner that comes over and across over your body. You stay very perfectly still, tighter clothing in order to get a super accurate measurement. It's a low dose of X-ray. It does not just calculate your body fat percentage, but it also looks at your bone density, your lean muscle mass. Although it is incredibly accurate, it's a little bit more on the pricey side and sometimes really hard to find. Although if you're going to make a trip anywhere and really want a really accurate look at what your body fat is, lean mass, bone density, all the above, then I highly recommend finding a DEXA scan. Next up, we have hydrostatic weighing. So the number two, probably most accurate type of body fat testing is hydrostatic weighing. Hydro being water, so you're actually submerged in water. So this method involves weighing you on land at first and then submerging you in water and basically measuring the displacement of water to body weight. Since muscle is denser than fat, everyone has seen the image, it's going to calculate the body density and calculates your body fat. It's highly accurate. Again, really hard to come by. Not a lot of places have just a tub and a proper scale to be able to measure this type of body fat. However, if you are, say, near a university where they have a kinesiology lab, they may have one and you may have access to it. So it's great. It works. If you're not a fan of water and submerging your whole body, you basically have to go underwater, blow out all the air that's in your lungs. I'm a nose holder. Don't judge. But that's probably the second most accurate way to test body fat. The third one, starting to get a little bit more accessible now, is called the BOD Pod. And I showed you a few weeks ago on my Instagram, I had recently gone and done a body fat testing at the University of New Brunswick, Fredericton location in their kin lab, where they have a BOD Pod accessible to people. So what a BOD Pod is basically you sit in a little pod without moving, wearing as little clothing as possible, ideally, because it does reduce the accuracy. But this one, instead of displacing water, it's actually air displacement. So air displacement plethysmography. So you basically sit inside a pod and it becomes a sealed chamber. So no air in, no air out. And it's going to calculate the body composition based on how much air you displace. So rather, before it was hydrostatic for water, this time it's air. So it's super quick, literally like 3 minutes worth of just sitting there back and forth. So they'll do 2 different tests worthy. You're not sitting in an airless pod for 3 minutes. It's literally like 30 seconds and then they'll open up the door. They'll do a couple measurements just to make sure there's an average between 2 or 3 different testing times. Super non-invasive, a little bit more accessible, and a little bit more price-worthy. Next type of body fat testing is just a simple skin caliper test. So a skin caliper test, you can buy one at, sometimes even Walmart has them in like the fitness center, fitness section. You can buy them online for sure, but essentially it is just a skin caliper test. So it's going to measure the pinch fold. So your skin would go in here and it basically measures, take your skin between these calipers, it'll give you a reading. And then sometimes they come with a special little dial that you can kind of adjust to see, male or female, what your range is at. This is going to be probably one of the most common ones because it's easily accessible It's definitely affordable. There's a bunch of different pinch points on your body that you would use to pinch. So something like your hips, your stomach fat, the top, like the back of your arms, triceps, calves. So there's a bunch of different pinch points to be able to determine and measure an average of body fat percentage. So I would say this is a pretty useful tool if you're a personal trainer and your clients are looking to see kind of where their baseline is at. Then I would recommend starting with something like this. So we're working in order of most effective to least effective. So that was number 4 for the skin caliper test. Now we're on to number 5, the handheld bioimpedance analysis. So the goofy one where you hold on to something. In my opinion, this is not an accurate way to measure. I think it gives people a lot of false hope sometimes. But I know you've definitely seen one of these handheld devices. They probably got you locked into some personal training at your gym by using one of these. So what it does essentially is it sends a small electrical signal through your body to estimate your fat mass based on how much resistance the current of electrical impedance has. So it's quick and easy. Accuracy, I'd say, is not so much. Depending on some factors like your hydration level. Women especially, we're gonna fluctuate all the time depending on that time of the month. Everyone fluctuates in weight based on stress, the heat, all of it. So I'd say it's not super accurate, and I wouldn't put too much stock into a bioimpedance analysis body fat test. Now, one I would say that is a little bit more accurate is the waist to hip ratio. So this is just a quick assessment of fat distribution, basically. From your hip to your waist. It's a very popular method, and it's a really great way to kind of start understanding where your level of body fat is when you're starting, say, a diet or a training plan with a new trainer. Essentially, it's measuring your waist and the hip circumference, and then you're dividing the waist number by the hip number, and that's going to give you a ratio. This method helps to assess kind of the storage of fat. And mostly it's going to help you understand whether you're at a scary level of body fat or an okay level of body fat. BMI, you've all heard it before, the body mass index. Lastly, I would say it is probably the least accurate in terms of telling you where your body fat is. So essentially this scale is going to give you a number based on your height and your weight. And that is going to help you assess whether you're obese, morbidly obese, super morbidly obese, normal, underweight, or super underweight. It doesn't differentiate muscle and fat. So for example, an athlete, say like myself, who walks around probably on average about 155 to 160 pounds, but I'm only 5'4", on that scale, it's going to assume that I am on more towards the obese category. So it really doesn't take into account that, again, muscle is going to weigh more than fat. It is denser. So therefore it is the least accurate. Although it's one of those where it could be okay if you're just trying to assess what the average is. However, the national average of people, it tends to be on the heavier side. So I would not put stock in BMI whatsoever. If you're going to do a measurement, use the waist to hip ratio. Other than that, not that accurate. So in terms of how many times and how often you should assess or test yourself, the DEXA scan, I would recommend maybe every 3 to 6 months. Again, it's very hard to find, and sometimes it's going to be quite pricey, so I wouldn't want to do much more than that. The reason is that it does give a very detailed and pretty close assessment, which involves, and because you wouldn't want to do it super duper often, because like I said, it's expensive. There is a low dose of radiation that comes along with it. If you're just the average person, it's probably not necessary to get in depth or go in depth very often on what your level of visceral fat, subcutaneous fat is, muscle density, bone density, all of that. I think for the average person, a one-time assessment will do just fine. And then maybe do it in a few years if you've made some massive changes to your lifestyle. Hydrostatic weighing, I would say, again, every 3 to 6 months, because it is a little bit expensive, although it is highly accurate, similar to the DEXA scan. Not always super convenient to get to one of these. So if you find one, do it, and then maybe reassess in 6 or more months, just to see where you're kind of where you're averaging and if you're floating around. Bod Pod, you could probably test every 2 to 3 months. I plan on going back again when I get a little deeper into my off season. The last time I took my assessment was like 5 or 6 days after my show. So obviously I was much leaner then. I'm not nearly as lean as I was then than I am now. So I'll probably do it again, you know, come, you know, 3 or 4 months into my off season. Again, I have to drive about an hour to go find it. It is about $100 every time I go do that, Canadian. So, but it is more likely more accessible than, say, hydrostatic weighing or the DEXA scan. The skin caliper tests, I would recommend doing it every 4 to 6 weeks even. So this one, again, super accessible. You can toss it in your backpack to the gym. Hopefully your personal trainer maybe has one on hand. Way more cost effective, way easy to do. And because it is so readily available, you can do it every month or so, every 2 months, to kind of see where your levels are changing, where you're holding the most body fat. This is a really good tool to have, and you can test more frequently. Handheld bioimpedance, I mean, you could do it just as often if you have one available to you as the skin caliper test, although I don't recommend it because I don't think it is super accurate. Waist to hip ratio, again, all it is a calculation, and all you need is a measuring tape. So measuring the waist, around the waist and around the hip, and the ratio between those two. Super easy to do, super inexpensive. So again, every maybe 1 to 2 months to check your progress. I hope you found this body fat testing video helpful. I thought it was kind of quick, to the point, kind of gives you a breakdown of the first, you know, the ones that I think are super accurate and the ones that I think that are accurate that you can do at home or with your personal trainer, or ones that just shouldn't matter whatsoever, like the BMI. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Really helps me out a ton. For more fitness, science content, as well as training content, make sure you're following along. And please let me know in the comments below if there's anything else you want me to touch on, talk about, show you, you know, in my own day-to-days or in the fitness world. I'm happy to talk about and show you more about what I'm doing and how I'm keeping accountable in my off season with keeping up with my body fat testing. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you following. See you in the next one.